It doesn't surprise me that, according to, I guess, several outlets, that there is opposition, opposing, if you will, to the Las Vegas stadium being made on the strip, in Las Vegas. I'm not surprised, and I don't think anybody else should be surprised. Because not only do you got opposition from teachers, basically a teachers union or something like that in Las Vegas, that don't want it to happen, or they don't want the financing to come from the public. But now you also got a majority of the citizens in Las Vegas that, well, they're not opposed to getting an MLB team. They just don't want the A's. In other words, they're like, yeah, you could build the stadium, and hey, we'd be willing to fund it no matter what others say, but we don't want another city's team. We want our own team. And honestly, I don't think any of us, should be surprised by, that, I guess you could say that kind of a situation, becoming reality or trying to become reality. Because, it's one thing to, want to move a team from one city to another and that city being, accepting of it. But it's another to say, you know, yeah, we want to move said, but what I'm trying to say is it's another to say that, yeah, we want a team, but we don't want this team. We want our own team, you know. And it's kind of weird too because you look at the Raiders, if you will, and you would think that if they felt the same way that they, do about the A's that they did about the Raiders, that the Raiders probably would have stayed either in Oakland or moved to Sacramento, one of those two. But that didn't happen. Instead, they were Vegas bound. They had a stadium and everything already, all set and ready to go, and that was it. And there are still loyal fans, even in Oakland, that will make the trip once in a while down to Las Vegas to support the Raiders. Now, with that said, though, why does this feel, different when it comes to the A's? Well, one, the A's are an iconic team. They are very well known. They're very well prestigious in sports. But here's the thing: it's the fan base. And unlike the Raiders, who you could put the Raiders anywhere, there were talk about putting the Raiders in San Antonio, Nashville. There was talk of taking them to New Mexico, Albuquerque, you name it. You could put the Raiders anywhere, and they would have a diehard fan base. They would. They would have a diehard fan base. You could put them anywhere, they would have a diehard fan base. End of story. So, what about the A's? Well, the A's historically do have a fan base in certain parts of the country. They have a fan base, believe it or not, still in Philadelphia, because that's where they started. They have a fan base in Kansas City, because that's where they moved to after Philadelphia. And of course, they have a fan base, where they are currently right now in Oakland. But they don't, but here's the thing, with those being an exception in some other outer areas, not every place is, Raider, is not, well, I shouldn't say Raider country. Not every place is athletic country. That's the thing. And I think that's why Las Vegas, many people are more opposed to the A's moving from Oakland to Las Vegas than they were about the Raiders, because the Raiders, again, they have an established fan base in Las Vegas because there were those that went from Las Vegas to Oakland to cheer the Raiders on. And even when the Raiders were in Los Angeles, there were people that traveled from Las Vegas to Los Angeles to cheer them on. So to know that, hey, we're going to get the Raiders as part of our city now, of course, that was very enticing, and that turned a lot of people on to accepting them into the city. The A's, on the other hand, are a different story. The A's basically don't have that same fan base. They don't have that same following, that the Raiders have. Because again, like I said, you could have moved the Raiders anywhere, and that fan base would have followed. no matter what. That fan base would have followed, and you were guaranteed to have a Raiders fan base, loyal fan base in that city, no matter, where they would have landed. The A's, on the other hand, are not so fortunate. And this is kind of that scenario right now, to where it's like, again, Las Vegas doesn't have a problem with getting an MLB team, but they don't want the A's as their MLB team. They want somebody else. They want their own team. And that might be something that happens. If during the upcoming meetings and everything for the MLB, which I'm assuming are going to take place during the All-Star break in a few weeks, you know, I'm assuming that that's going to get brought up. That's going to get brought up, and that's going to cause some complication. Like, they're going to bring up to the commissioner, they're going to bring up to the owners that, hey, the city wants an MLB team, they don't want the A's though. And, there are, people that are opposing the stadium as well. So a lot of things are definitely becoming very obstacularly, easy for me to say, obstacularly for the move to happen. I mean, yes, the legislation has, finalized, the deal for a stadium to be made. But again, now you have this opposition coming from all different sides. I mean, like I said, you got opposition of teachers that don't want the stadium to be built, using the funding of the public or whatever, or something like that. And then, of course, you have now the city, the people themselves that are like, look, we want a team, but we don't want the A's. Now, what could come of this? What could come of this, maybe during the meetings that take place during the All-Star break, which, again, I think that's the next time they will meet. Well, I look at it this way. One, what could come of this is the move will still happen, but an agreement will be that as soon as the A's land in Las Vegas and the stadium is built, that just like the Montreal Expos, they will have a name change. That's what will happen. They will have a name change. And that right there would be probably the most devastating news anybody here in the Bay Area, the Northern California region, anybody that's an A's fan across the country from Philly to Kansas City and whatever, that would be the most devastating news you could hear. Because here you have this century-long history, this over century-long history of championships and everything under the Athletics banner. And, all of a sudden you could potentially see that disappear, should they go forward with the move. And the proposition being, okay, they'll move to Vegas, but instead of being the A's, we'll make them into somebody else, and thus kind of find out and basically kind of fill that void of doing expansion. Like the A's will go from being, hey, we're the Oakland A's to the Las Vegas A's to, hey, we're the Oakland A's to now we're the Las Vegas Thunder or whatever, or we're the Las Vegas Heat or whatever. That's what they could, and that's what could end up happening. I mean, look at the Expos. Look at the Expos, guys. They went from being Montreal Expos to Washington Nationals within a year. Thus, not only did Washington get their own MLB team and everything, but in a very loopholeish way, they got an expansion team. They got their own expansion team, but at the cost of Montreal losing the Expos. The Expos basically went from being their own team, and instead of being the Washington Expos, they ended up becoming the Washington Nationals. In other words, they became an expansion team. And again, very loopholeish. But there's been a history of that all the time. There's been a history. And there would have been more recent history had, the cities like Sacramento not come to the aid of, let's say, the Kings. Because let's not forget, the Kings were on the verge of probably moving more than likely to Seattle if it wasn't for the city coming through. And people, publicly and privately bringing in the funds and everything to get the Golden One Center up. But the point is, if it wasn't for that, the Kings were more likely Sacramento bound. And unlike the move from Kansas City to Sacramento, they were not going to keep their name. Instead, the Kings would have became the Supersonics. The same with the New Orleans team. All right, the New Orleans team. They were once the original Charlotte Hornets. Then they became the New Orleans Hornets. Then they became, what is it, the New Orleans Pelicans? I think that's what they changed the name to. And then what happened? Charlotte, they ended up getting a team again, but they called them the Bobcats. But then they realized, no, that's not going to work. Let's go back to the Hornets and everything. So yeah, there have been a lot of situations where a team will keep their name maybe for about a season, but then that will change to a new name, a season later. Let's take a look at the Houston Oilers. Houston Oilers, when they went to Tennessee, became for a season with the Tennessee Oilers until the following season where they became the Titans. You kind of see what I'm saying? Basically the A's are in a situation to where they could still move more than likely to Las Vegas, and maybe for a season still be the Athletics, but in the following season they could be, like I said, the Las Vegas Heat, the Las Vegas Gamblers, the Las Vegas, the Las Vegas, Blue Skies, whatever name they would come up with, they would become the Las Vegas Lions. You get the idea. They could end up having their name changed a season later to really establish Las Vegas having its own identity and having its own identity with its own MLB team. But again, that's only if the move officially does happen. I mean, yeah, everything is in place. Everything is in place for it to occur. But now you have all these obstacles. You have, teachers and other groups that are, against the financial funding by the public and other things like that. You have, the people that don't want the A's, but they want their team. And again, that's a situation that could be remedied by following the same status that other teams that have, left, cities and become who they are and all that. Basically become who they are. They could follow those same strategies, if you will. And what I mean is that basically, like I said, the A's could stay the A's for a season in Las Vegas and then get changed to another name. And thus, by doing so, you give Las Vegas somewhat their own team, even though the season before they were still under the A's name. Like I said, same with the Oilers. When they went to Tennessee for a season, they were still the Oilers, and then they became the Titans. So you still had that connection. But that's the situation the A's are in right now. You have Las Vegas that wants their own team, but that wants an MLB team, but they don't want the A's. And then you got this opposition and all that. Again, I told you in one video there are many steps still to be hurdled over before anything becomes final, and these are definitely some of those major steps, in my opinion. These are definitely some of those major steps. But what are your guys' thoughts? What do you think of this whole situation? Comment down below. Live chat during the premiere. Super chats will be open. But what are your thoughts on it? And until next time, guys, I will talk to you later. But give me your thoughts. Love to hear how you feel about it.